The ancient Egyptians believed there was a spell powerful enough to command the dead. Long before modern religions, long before science explained the unseen, ancient Egypt believed the world was filled with invisible beings, spirits, demons, shadow entities, restless souls. They were not myths. They were part of daily life. The Egyptians believed these beings lived alongside humans, watching, whispering, influencing fate from an unseen realm. And they believed something even more dangerous, that humans could control them. Through magic, through rituals, through forbidden spells. One of the most feared and powerful sources of this knowledge was a collection of ancient texts known today as the Book of the Dead. But its original name was far more chilling. The Book of Coming Forth by Day. It was not a storybook, it was a manual, a guide for the soul, and a weapon against the supernatural. Inside these scrolls were spells designed to protect the dead in the afterlife. But some of them served a darker purpose. They were meant to command spirits, to bind demons, to force unseen beings into obedience. The ancient Egyptians believed every person had multiple spiritual parts. The Ka, the life force, the Ba, the personality, the Akh, the transformed spirit, and the Shout, the shadow self. When someone died, these parts could become unstable. A restless Akh could return to the living world. A corrupted spirit could haunt the living, and hostile demons could cross into human space. This is why spells were necessary, not just for protection, but for control. Priests known as Heka masters were trained in sacred magic. Heka was not seen as evil. It was the divine energy that made creation possible. But in the wrong hands, it could become something terrifying. One of the most dangerous rituals involves speaking the true name of a spirit. In Egyptian belief, knowing a being's true name gave you power over it. Names were not labels. They were keys. To speak a true name was to hold dominion. Some spells were designed to summon spirits from tombs, others were meant to bind demons at crossroads, wells, or desert ruins, and some were believed to force jinn-like beings into service. These rituals were not performed lightly. They required incense, sacred oils, blood offerings, amulets carved with protective symbols, and precise spoken words. A single mistake could invite something uncontrollable. One of the most feared spells was said to compel a wandering spirit to obey human commands. The spell called upon powerful gods like Thoth, Isis, and Ra. It demanded that the spirit submit or face destruction in the afterlife. The words were written in red ink, a color reserved for chaos, danger, and supernatural power. The magician would draw a circle around themselves, place protective amulets at the four directions, and chant the incantation while holding a figurine of the spirit they wished to bind. If the ritual worked, the spirit would be forced into silence, or service, or banishment, but if it failed, the consequences were catastrophic. Ancient texts describe rituals going wrong, spirits refusing commands, demons attacking the magician, madness, illness, sudden death. This is why these spells were forbidden to ordinary people. Only trained priests were allowed to use them, and even they feared them. Over time, stories began to circulate of magicians who went too far, of priests who summoned something they could not control, of spirits that refused to leave, of curses that spread through entire families. As religions changed and centuries passed, many of these spells were hidden, buried, or destroyed. Some were rewritten into religious prayers. Others were erased from history. But fragments still exist in temple walls, in papyrus scrolls, in museum collections, and in folklore. When Islam later arrived in Egypt, the belief in unseen spirits did not disappear. It transformed. The ancient demons became jinn. The restless Akh became haunted spirits. The shadow self became whispering entities in the dark. And the forbidden spells became whispered rituals passed down in secret. Even today, in rural Egypt, stories persist of spells found in old books, of rituals performed in abandoned tombs, of people who tried to command spirits and regretted it. So did ancient Egyptians really have a spell meant to control spirits? Yes, not just one, but many. They believed humans were not powerless against the unseen. They believed magic could bend the supernatural. But they also believed there was a price. Because in ancient Egypt, one rule was sacred. He who commands the dead must one day answer to them. And that is why most of these spells were never meant to be used. They were warnings, not weapons. And if such a spell still exists today, the question is not, does it work? The real question is, what would answer if you tried?